Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series. Take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the DM and Player Supplement, the Book of Seidr, designed by Thieves, Cant Games, aka Evan Jackson for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my content, consider using my affiliate links for online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. Usually when we look at Norse-themed content or media or whatever, we look at the warriors, right? It's the Viking warriors, the stereotypical Norse like player character concept that most people have when they think of using that kind of theme and that kind of culture and lore. The Book of Seidr, not sure the pronunciations, focuses more on the magical aspect of Norse mythology, of which there is plenty of it, and it is all about basically altering fate and having destiny written in a tapestry. And there's an interesting information here about how even though Norse culture is all about destiny and fate and stuff, it is still about individual heroes making their choices, and it just so happens that that is what creates their fate or destiny. So there's an interesting kind of paradox there between your predetermined destiny, but also it's the choices you make that end up being that destiny that we knew all along that you were bound for greatness, kind of a thing. There's a lot of really great information here. So I previously reviewed the Book of Monstrous Kennings by Thieves, Cant Games, which also had an absolutely amazing amount of information, lore about Norse creatures, like pulled from Norse mythology. And this is along the same vein, where you can tell the designer really, really knows their shit when it comes to the Norse mythology. There's just really great information here, specifically about the magic, the way magic works in that culture. And so it's useful mainly for players, because this includes a lot of player-focused content. So whereas Book of Monstrous Kennings was a bunch of monsters for DMs to use, whether you want to just have a generic fantasy campaign and include some of those cool monsters, or if you do want to create a more Norse-themed campaign, either one works. And this one is really the same way. This is just focused on players. It provides 3 new subclasses, 9 spells, 8 feats, a couple of monsters, and a bunch of what are called WUDs, which are magic tattoos, basically, that can have different powers associated with them. So you could either use this with a entire Viking style Norse themed campaign, and this is for if you want to play more of a magic based character who's got more ties to that world and culture, you could do that. Or if you again just wanted to play an individual character who was themed around that, because I think that's how a lot of us play these kind of fantasy RPGs, is, the world is, it's whatever the world the DM wants, but then everybody comes into play using their own, concept for their character based on different stuff that they like and enjoy. So this could be one that's just, if you just want your character to be modeled after, a Norse, player character, but not be a just straight up barbarian Viking warrior or a skald or some kind of bard type character, because I feel like that's usually what we think of when we think of a Norse character. Instead, we have new subclasses for the Sorcerer, the Warlock, and the Wizard. Basically, a lot of your pure spellcasters. So a lot of great information on how these characters pull their abilities together. Again, it's all about fate weaving, which in D&D is actually mechanically pretty easy to reflect, because you've got the advantage and disadvantage system, right? So automatically everything that has to do with like weaving fate or altering destiny or something is basically like, you gain advantage or you impose disadvantage on somebody else. And that's what a lot of the different abilities can reflect, as well as the new spells especially. But I think it's fine. It's just very mechanically sound that it's already, in there in the game rules. So I like all the lore stuff, but we can go over the 3 subclasses. There's only 3 of them, so I don't mind kind of digging in a little bit deeper. The Sorcerer is about blood magic, which is something that I do think is missing from a D&D class, which is, kind of the World of Warcraft theme Warlock, where it's like your magic comes from your ability to sacrifice like your own life energy. And I think it's a good concept. I just wish that the 6th level ability was the 3rd level ability, because that's how I think this character should operate from the get-go. Instead, you have a pretty lame ability where Your charisma minus your constitution modifier is your bloat modifier, and that you can add. You can add your spellcasting ability to deal damage or to heal somebody. Basically, whenever you do something that involves a dice roll, and then you take some damage as well. It's not a very interesting system. But then when you get to although the passive abilities are good, you gain you essentially gain the sorcerer. What is it? The draconic one, I think, where you gain better armor and more hit points. The 6th level ability is the one that I think should have been the 3rd level ability, which is you can sacrifice your own hit dice into sorcery points, just at I think a 1-to-1 ratio. And you do take some damage when you do that, but I think that's just an easy way of the mechanics are already there, so you just sacrifice your own life energy, not your current. Oh, you do take some current hit points, but it's that stored energy of your hit dice, and then you gain sorcery points after that, and you can use your sorcery points for whatever. And then it just kind of goes from there. I don't think the other abilities are necessarily worth breaking down. You can store damage, I guess, at 14th level whenever you deal, or whenever you have somebody that takes slashing or piercing damage. So whenever, in other words, they're bloodletting, then you can store some of that damage and then add it to your own damage. That's kind of interesting. Otherwise, it's pretty simple. I just wish that 6th level ability were more front loaded. The Warlock is the Desir, which I am, not an expert on Norse mythology by any means, but I have read a lot of the Thor Marvel comics, and some of them really in cool ways do go into that mythology. And the Desir, I thought, were like evil cannibal ghosts in that series. They're very much antagonists. They don't go over, maybe they're not, that's not necessarily the case, but in here they're just basically ghosts in general. They're not necessarily evil cannibals by any means. You do gain your own spell list, but the important thing is you can summon a spirit once per short rest, I believe, and the spirit can be in 3 different versions, 2 of which are pretty damn good. One of them, everybody gains temporary hit points, which scale to your warlock level, and advantage on con checks and con saving throws, which is pretty useful. And another one is very much that like Fate Weaver thing, where if anybody makes an attack, then you can use your reaction to impose advantage or disadvantage. So basically, you summon this aura, it's like a 30-foot aura, I believe, and then you can make your reactions from there. It lasts, I think, a minute, and then you can do it again on the next short rest. So almost every combat, you can basically summon up your spirit and have that spirit do things, which is cool. That's a neat ability, and not necessarily one that a lot of warlocks can do. I feel like other classes can do kind of similar type things, but that's at least a cool one for warlock. At 6th level, you gain, I'm pretty sure, the Devil's Own Luck, which is already a warlock ability for fiends, I believe, which is whenever you make an ability or saving throw, you use this feature to add a d10 to your roll. That's not terribly exciting. At 14th level, you can project your own spirit, which is really neat because not only do you gain resistance, you gain flying speed, you can move through objects, you literally become a ghost, but you can also teleport your body to where your ghost ends up. So you become like capable of essentially phasing through stuff, which is pretty awesome. It is 14th level, so you're getting up there, but that's a really neat ability, so I like the Warlock one quite a bit. We also get new Invocations, which, again, a lot of them have to do with a lot of cool Norse stuff. You gain Find the Path, Control Weather. I like the ability you can talk to Sentinels, which are like statues or scarecrows or just different effigies. Obviously, it depends on if your campaign world and your DM is going to have those things around, but I think that's a neat thing that's slightly different from speaking with plants or animals. I love Eyes of the Raven as an invocation because that is a very classic Norse thing, right? Is being able to have the Raven especially be like a portent of some importance, whether it's a harbinger of doom or somebody who's like giving a message, or just the fact that a lot of the Norse gods just transformed into ravens. Like the fact that you can like see through the bird and go around, that's a really cool invocation. The wizard is probably mechanically the most interesting, and usually I'm not a big fan of wizards because I don't think they do a whole lot of interesting things, because wizards basically just rely on their spells to make them interesting. And I think this one does some cool stuff, and it front loads it in a nice way. So you've got the Divination Wizard, right? The Divination Wizard is always the favorite because you get to roll those 2 d20s and then use them in place of whatever else. How do you make a fate weaving wizard when you already have the Divination Wizard? I think this does a pretty decent job of trying to separate itself, but the 2nd level ability is pretty close, which is as a reaction. Whenever you see somebody within 30 feet do basically a thing, attack, roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can force them to re-roll, and then they have to use the second roll. So it's a little more wild, I guess, in terms of you don't know if that's going to make it better or worse or whatever, but I guess you have an idea of like this isn't going to be good enough or this is going to be too good, depending on you're using it for offense or defense. So it's very similar in how the Divination Wizard works, except you're not storing those rolls ahead of time. The better ability, and you also get to add your intelligence to your initiative, is at 6th level, which again, it's a shame that you have to wait until 6th level to get the actual better, more interesting ability mechanically, but it is very interesting, where whenever you cast a spell of 1st level or higher, you can create this magic ward, which can block either damage or healing. In other words, damage against your allies, or you can block healing that enemies are trying to like heal each other. And it scales to, twice your wizard level plus your intelligence modifier. And you create it at the time you cast the spell, and then in future turns, you can use your reaction to use that ward to then block basically either that damage or that healing. And then if it ever reduces to 0 hit points, technically the ward is still active. It lasts until like your next long rest, but then you have to expend spell slots to then recharge it full of its own shield, which it does seem very, very light though. It would be like, oh, that's a great way to use like lower level spell slots when you're higher level. Well, it only does regains number of hit points equal to twice the level of the spell. So it's really not going to do much, by using a 1st or 2nd level spell, but I think it's a neat idea, and I like the ability of having this ward that you can then, move around and use to block different things and abilities. So I thought that was cool, and at least felt more original to a lot of different things that I'm seeing. So that's the Seidr magic wizard, which is just, you're just using that Norse magic. New spells, which are all themed around, altering fate and changing the outcome of something. So it's a lot of, reflecting spells, redirecting spells. One of them is a really cool kind of version of the augury spell, but there's better mechanics involved. This is the Ask the Nornir, where you and the DM roll dice, but the DM's is secret, and the DM looks and sees if they're both even numbers, then the Nornir answer truthfully. If odd numbers, you answer with lies, and if odd or even, you do a combination, and the player doesn't quite know. That was a really good way of better version of just saying, oh, it's up to the DM whether, how much you say or what you say and how truthful it is and all this shit. This way, he's like, okay, now I know the kind of information I need to give, and then I can kind of play around with it from there. So I did like that bit on that one. The redirecting spells works pretty well. You actually roll a d20, and you've got a pretty good chance of just redirecting it to somewhere that's empty. But then if you roll a 20, you can redirect it towards, enemy creatures, or if you roll a 1, then it is centered on you, unfortunately, which it probably was anyway, so what are you going to lose there? So a good mix of spells, and I'm glad we got spells because these are all spellcasting classes, so it makes sense that we would get this stuff, different spells that give you advantage and gives you all the foresight and all that. It's very thematically appropriate to a culture based on destiny and predetermination and everything. We also get a few new feats, which again reflect a lot of what the fate weaving is all about. Just feat versions of a lot of the spells. You can, kind of get like the lucky feat essentially. I like Beastwalker is pretty cool, where you gain essentially mage armor automatically, and you can cast Alter Self once per short rest, which is pretty nice. The second sight, the greater and lesser, gives you like see invisibility, which is a way of like, seeing the magic weave and everything. So very good with there. The guiding spirit. So we do get some monsters, and I was worried that the designer was just going to throw in like, okay, here's some monsters from the Book of Monstrous Kennings that, I just think are cool and have to do with Norse mythology. But I actually think they did a better job of including specifically creatures that players would care about. Similar to, if you read the player's handbook, at the end there are some monster stat blocks in there, but they're all like animal companions, magic familiars, potential mounts, wild shape forms. They're all things that players would actually care about in terms of how to enhance their character or look at what their options are and things like that. And this is a version of that, where there are a lot of like celestials and elementals that would make sense for players to be involved with, whether it's, which I really like the idea of the let's see, what is it, the Fieldja? Again, pronunciations are beyond me, but very similar to the His Dark Materials, where it's like your soul is like personified as a creature outside of your body. So that's a really cool idea for a character to potentially have, especially a Norse-themed character, to have, this animal companion who kind of represents their soul, basically, that's outside of their body. You can either do that to all your players or just maybe one player with some certain rules and things. That's a neat idea. And other ones are a lot of these cool, like celestial familiar, that could, act as familiars or different companions or things. So I was very impressed that the creatures all fit that bill very well, and further lead credence to you being able to, embody that theme of that Norse culture player character concept. Worldcraft is the art of inking up, but the tattoos are magical, which is neat. And what's cool here is the designers actually created 2 different methods of using Worldcraft, which is either as magic items or as feats, which gives you, I think, 2 very different ways of using them as a DM, which is you can either reward them to players, maybe a specific player doing a specific thing can undergo, and it even mentions the fact that, hey, your tattoo artist has to be a skilled, Worldcrafter who can do these different, things and make sure they've got the tools and stuff. So maybe you can create some kind of quests like to do that, or, as a reward, or, maybe they're part of that culture and that's their player quest arc, whatever it is, to do the magic item. Or for the feat, if you wanted to just, create that Viking campaign and have everybody already be well versed in that stuff, then you can just use them as feats, so that every once in a while you can just gain this powerful new feat, which a lot of them kind of reflavor, and even mentions, the designer says, a lot of these just reflavor feats, like especially racial feats that were added in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, but just as these wodes, which are a little more, thematically appropriate to the Norse mythology stuff. So I think that gives you really cool 2 different ways of using it. To me, it's like, are you running a Viking campaign world? Then I think the feats can be used, or you could just use magic items, but I think the feats would be more acceptable, versus if you're not, but you want to include that as something like maybe one player character is really into doing or something, or just a neat reward. Maybe you just have a quest giver character, or you rescued somebody or whatever, that they have to be skilled with that, and they can offer that as a service, and they can essentially give players a magic item by these Wode magic items. So, and they do a lot of the stuff you would usually expect. There's +1s to, saves and armor class, and letting you reroll your dice, giving you like half-orc relentless endurance or regeneration, like you have a bonus action dash, advantage on stealth checks, just, a whole lot of stuff that you would normally find from probably like the better feats out there, basically, or the, solid magic items that aren't really like game-breakingly, legendary or very rare or anything. So a good mix, and I think it's cool just to have, magic tattoos that you can draw from, and that does feel very suitably, Norse mythology-y. So I thought that was a really good mix. And honestly, I don't have any complaints, because I think it's a really great looking product, which was true of Book of Monstrous Kennings as well. Absolutely gorgeous layout. The production value is amazing. You can see just tons of really awesome giant art throughout, which of course means it's just an excellent read. Just a really fantastic product. Let's go over my pros and cons for the Book of Seidr. Stop butchering it. Pro, 3 magical Norse themed subclasses. I might have tweaked things a little bit here and there, but in general, I thought that they all had really good ideas. I guess one of my complaints is always that I like it when you front load the like cool class feature, and then you can build from there. I don't want to have to wait until I get my cool class feature. At least you don't have to wait till more than 6th level to get to some of these better ones. But all of them I thought did embody different elements of it's a very specific niche, which is it's Norse themed, but it's also specifically magic stuff in that Norse themed concept. And I think all 3 of these do a pretty fantastic job of that, and offer you interesting mechanical abilities to use. Pro, over a dozen fate themed spells and eldritch invocations. That all seem very appropriate to what you would find here, and it makes sense that you would get a lot of good spells with a spell casting focus supplement. Pro, several unique celestial and elemental creatures that would make excellent companions. I really wanted to give a special thumbs up to the little, I don't even consider it a monster section, but it is called Guiding Spirits, and these are specifically creatures that would enhance a player character concept, either at character creation or maybe later on, to reflect either your Viking world or just your individual, Norse-themed character, and they're really well done with that. And I do believe most of these are from Book of Monstrous Kennings, but I think, there was a lot of thought process put into which ones to include in here. And Pro, 2 methods for using over a dozen woods. which are magic tattoos, as either magic items or as feats, and I just kind of explained all that earlier in my review, but having those two concepts work very well, and they all feel very well balanced. None of them are too, game-breakingly powerful. You have to attune to them, by the way, if they're a magic item tattoo, so you don't just automatically now get that enhancement. You still have to attune like a magic item, so it all feels like it works very well. But those methods let you, again, probably use either a Viking-themed world or just, in your generic fantasy world, you just want to use those more Norse-themed abilities and concepts. Final verdict: by focusing on a lesser explored area of Norse lore and mythology, the Book of Seidr offers a rich tapestry of magic-focused player content, perfect for an appropriately themed character or campaign. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com, and you can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Christopher Thomas, Adam, Stan, Alex, Cam, William, I'm Loud, and Lachlan Baird. And gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcus, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Ross, Lippy, Spuds, Jerome, Sclinia, Nick, Blood Angel, Veronis, Babu, Nathan, Fazaka, Tortoise, James, and Kyle. Thank you all very much for your support.